So in this question, we are given two integer arrays, and we need to write a program to check if these two integer arrays are permutation of each other or not. So before writing the program, let's identify what's permutation. So if two arrays have the same elements, no matter if they are located at the same index or not, they are permutation of each other. So here you need to take into account that in this question, we are looking only integer arrays. So this means that we have only integer numbers in our array. So let's say we have two arrays like this. So we can easily see that these arrays are permutation of each other because all elements are same over here. So we have 2 over here and we have 2 over here, we have 1 over here and we have 1 over here, and 3 and 5 and 6. So you see that the elements that are located in the first array are also located in the second array. So this means that these arrays are permutation of each other. So how can we solve this problem? So here there are many ways of solving this problem. We can solve this problem using sorting algorithm, or we can solve this problem using hashing or some other ways. But at this stage, we have not covered that topics yet in our course. So that's why I will solve this question using different approach. So in case of integer arrays, it's very easy because what we are going to do over here, we are going to create two variables, which will be sum1 and sum2. So in sum1, we will have sum of elements of the first array, and in sum2, we will have sum of the elements of the second array. Then we are going to create another variable in which we will have the product of the first array's elements, and then we are going to create another variable. Here we will have the product of the elements of the second array. So you see that for the first array, sum of the elements is 21, and for the second array, sum of elements also 21. And for first array, product of elements is 720, and for the second array also it's the 720. So this means that if sum1 equals sum2, and at the same time multiplication 1 equals to multiplication 2, then in this case we can say that these arrays are permutation of each other. So our method will return true. So you need to take into account that this logic over here is applicable for integer arrays. So you cannot do this logic for the string arrays over here. So in our question, it says that we need to write logic for integer arrays. So that's why I have written logic like this, which is very easy because as I mentioned before, we have not covered the topics yet in which we can solve this problem in case of any type of array easily. So based on this logic, let's create our method in Java to see how this is working. Now here, the first thing that we are going to do, we are going to declare our method which returns boolean value. Now in this case, it's going to be a public boolean. The name of method will be permutation, and it will take two parameters. So the first parameter will be the first array and the second parameter will be the second array. So both of them will be the type of integer. So array1 and integer array2. So inside this method, the first thing that we are going to do, we are going to check that if the lengths of this array are equal. So if they are not equal, we don't need to implement any logic. We can straight away return false because in this case, they are not going to be permutation of each other. To be the permutation of each other, number of elements in both arrays must be the equal. So that's why I'm going to put first if condition like this. If array1.length is not equal to array2's length, so I'm going to copy this from here and put it over here, then in this case we are going to return false. So otherwise we are going to continue to implement our logic over here. So as we said before, the first thing that we are going to do, we are going to create variables in which we will assign the sum of the elements of both arrays. So the first variable will be sum1, and initially it will be set to 0, and the second variable will be sum2, and this one also will be set to 0. And then we are going to create two more variables in which we are going to store the product of the elements of these arrays over here. So this one also will be integer, so it's going to be mul1, which will be set to 1, and the second one will be multiplication 2, and this one also will be set to 1, because in this case we are putting 1 over here, because if we multiply 1 with any of elements, we are going to get the same element. That's why instead of 0 we are putting 1 over here. Then we are going to implement our logic. So what we are going to do, we are going to loop through these arrays and find the sum of the elements of these arrays and the product of the elements of this array. Now in this case I'm not going to write two separate loops, because since these arrays lengths are equal, so the number of indexes in this array will be equal. So that's why by looping once we can find the sum of the elements of the arrays in both array. So it's going to be like this: for I, int I equals 0, and this will continue until the length of any of this array, because length of both of arrays are same. So for simplicity, I'm going to put array 1. You can put over here array 2 also, it doesn't matter because both of lengths are same, and it will be increased by 1. Then here I'm going to assign the sum 1, the sum of elements of first array. So it's going to be like this: plus equal array 1 with the index of I. So I'm going to just copy this code from here and put it over here and change it for sum 2. So in this case it's going to be sum 2, but here array will be array 2. Then we are going to calculate the product of the elements of these arrays over here. So it's going to be like this: mul1 multiplied and equal array 1 with the index of I, and mul2 multiplied with the index of 2. So after calculating these variables over here, we are going to check that if sum1 is equal to sum2 and mul1 is equal to mul2, then in this case we are going to return true. This means that these arrays are permutation of each other. Otherwise we are going to return false. So if condition will be like this: if sum1 equals sum2 and mul1 equals mul2, then in this case we are going to return true. Otherwise, outside of this loop, I'm going to return false. So with this we have completed our method. So this is the logic that we explained before. So basically we are calculating the sum of the elements of both arrays and the product of the elements of the both array. Then we are comparing them. If they are equal, it means that these arrays are permutation of each other. If they are not equal, so in this case it means that they are not permutation of each other. So we are returning false. So here, let's see how this is working in practice. So what I'm going to do, so I'm going to create two arrays over here, type of integer, and check that if these arrays are permutation of each other. So the first one will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the second one will be, so I'm going to put the same elements in reverse order. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So in this case, we see that they are permutation of each other. So let's see if our method returns true or not. So result will be set permutation mn.permutation. So the first parameter will be array 1 and the second parameter will be array 2. So then we are going to print to the console result variable. So let's run our code to see that if this is working correct or not. Now in this case you see that it returns false. So for example, instead of 1 over here, if I put 0 and rerun our code, you see that in this case it's going to return false. So you see that it returns false in this case. So for example, if I put 1 over here and add one more element of 0 over here and run our code, in this case also it's going to return false. So you see that it returns false. So our method works perfectly. So we have implemented the logic of checking the two arrays if they are permutation of each other or not. So this is how we can check two integer array if they are permutation of each other or not. Now with this we have come to the end of this lecture, so hopefully everything is clear about this question as well. So let's continue to the next question.